analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
It's Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Professor Bishop. Let's jump right into it. This is the premier Black college football poll. Again, we're going to go with the NCAA Division II level programs. That is a composite of the CIAA, Central Intercollegiate Athletic Association, the SIAC, Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, as well as those independent programs at that level. They were all eligible to receive votes in the rankings. You have voters with head coaches and media members that were selected. All the coaches in the leagues were available to vote on the poll ranking. And when you look at that, when you talk about the Division II, let's start with those receiving votes. You had two teams that got 10 receiving votes, if you would. That's Livingston. The Blue Bears were 5-5, 3-4 last season. They ended up with 10 points just outside of the top 10, if you would. West Virginia State Yellow Jackets, the independent program outside of the CIAA SIAC, always finds a way to be around that top 10. Be interesting to see not only can they break into that top 10 and maybe find their way into that top 5 ranking this year. Pretty tough schedule when you talk about them playing in the Western Virginia Intercollegiate Athletic Conference over there, if you would. But they are receiving votes and got 10 votes just like Livingston Blue Bears. Let's get into the action. At number 10, you have Tuskegee. The Golden Tigers out of the SIAC come in at 10, 4-7, 3-7, 17 points. While a lot of folks had them at 10, Charles, somebody thinks they're going to be the surprise team of the year, and they gave them a first place vote. I wonder who that was.
Wow.
Number 9, exactly. It was Water Tigers, also out of the SIAC. 5-5, 4-4 votes, 53 points. You have at number 8, Allen, the Yellow Jackets, also out of the SIAC, loaded here at 6-5 overall, 5-3, 60 points. Just edging them out is number 7, Virginia State, the Trojans. That's Dr. Henry Frazier III coming in with the CIAA program at 6-4, 4-3 at 66 points. A lot more people are comfortable about 6-1. As you see a little spread, if you would, between number 7 and 6, which is the Fayetteville State Broncos, CIAA, if you would, 6-4, 6-1, 91 points. At number 5, Kentucky State, the SIAC, 93-71, 112 points. Didn't receive any first place vote, but the next 4 have several first place votes. Number 4 is Virginia Union. Panthers sit at 6 out of the CIAA, I should say, with 9-3 overall record last year, 7-0, bringing home the championship. That's Dr. Parker doing his thing. Probably one of the hottest coaches out there that remains at the Division II level that some of the SC programs may be looking at. 154 points, 7 first place votes. While you had more people see Albany State at the rank, only 4 of them thought of them as number 1 versus Virginia Union. They got more first place votes. So a bigger spread when you think of Virginia Union. Some people don't see them that high. A lot of people see them all the way at the top. But that said, Albany. That's Albany, as Mike would like to remind us. The Golden Rams out of the SIAC were 12-2, 8-0, lost a lot of players and the head coach, Quinn Gray, that is down there in Tallahassee, the highest of 7 hills, they like to stay in their place in those parts, FAMU. And guess what? Their first game to kick things off, Albany State travels to Tallahassee with FAMU. So that'll be interesting from that perspective. At number 2, they just inked out Albany State as Benedict in terms of total points, 157, 10 and 371. And they have 20 first place votes in terms of what the coaches thought there. You have Johnson C. Smith, if you would, CIAA. They're thought to repeat in terms of what they were able to do, win that championship first time in so many moons. They're at the top of this preseason. So people like what Coach Flowers is doing over there. 10-2, 6-1. Tough loss in the playoffs, but they have their chance. They open up the season against Albany State, they ran it last year, so that'll be interesting in terms of the Black College Football Hall of Fame, which features last year's champion of the CIAA and SIAC. So that'll be a top 3 matchup to be specific. But they come in with 168 points and 12 first-place votes in terms of what they get there in terms of the marks. Charles, what do you think in terms of this inaugural NCAA Division II HBCU ranking with the top 10 teams in preseason?
The linchpin for me is Albany State, sitting there at number 3. Justin losing Quinn Gray, quarterback as well.
That's a lot.
Will they be able to? I mean, a great program, obviously, but will they be able to continue to sustain what they were able to do last year? I mean, that was a tremendous season last year, 12-2, 8-0 in conference play. And, you know, they get the win over Benedict in the second round of the playoffs there. But that one's the one that's kind of curious to me if they can continue to be in that upper echelon there in terms of the Division II teams. When is Tuskegee going to make their, ascension back up the ladder? That's a question for me. Traditionally, always a great program, but they've fallen on hard times recently. We saw Upstart last year where Edward Waters kind of cooled off a bit toward the end of the season, but they were chunking the ball around all over the place. Interesting early season contest, WC Gordon Classic, where they go to Jackson, take on Jackson State. So can they continue that potent offense that they were able to put up last year? Johnson C. Smith, I think Benedict, I think they're rightfully where they need to be. But the one that I'm kind of paying attention to is Kentucky State, to see if they can make the next step forward in terms of what they were able to do. By all accounts, they could have knocked off Grambling last season. It did not happen, but they were right there in the mix.
Good stuff. Great points made by you, Charles, in terms of the top 10. Let me ask you this. Any of these top 10s, do you think early season rated too high that are likely not to finish the season in the top 10?
Allen looked like they got them a piece today, got them a receiver from LSU. That would have been my curious one there, but they don't add some talent. Like I said, I want to go back to Albany State. I'm very curious if they can continue the momentum from what they were able to do last season, losing a presence like Quinn Gray.
When you talk about those teams outside of the CIAA, SIAC, you got West Virginia State, Cheney. They've struggled a late, but West Virginia right there as a program outside of those teams that's getting voted. Do you think at the end of the year they'll actually find a way in the top 10?
Yes, I do. Good program. Absolutely.
I'd have to agree with you on that as well, Charles. With that being said, let's close out this third segment, come back on the other side in the fourth segment. Let's get it. We kind of teased it a little bit. As we talked about Lindy's, they do not have any teams in the top 10 as they rank it, if you would, but they do have the preseason defensive player of the year out of Albany State, Georgia. Defensive lineman Dedrick Drayton is All-American preseason player of the year. So did want to make sure we shouted him out as he's recognized by Lindy's. With that being said, we'll turn the page in this segment. Be right back on the other side, and let's get into the Division I FCS HBCU programs and see that top 10. I'm interested with any of those independents, as we like to say, but those teams that are outside of the SWAC MEAC. Can anybody jump in the top 10? All of them had down years last year. Tennessee State, North Carolina A&T, Hampton. Can any of those programs drop in the top 10? We'll be right back on the other side. Not only will we see the top 10, we'll see if any of those teams are in the mix, or will it just be all about the MEAC and SWAC? Stay tuned in. We'll be right back after this break.
Analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they want to lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. As we told you about the Black College Football Poll, this is a partnership that was sanctioned by the 4 HBCU conference commissioners, but it includes all HBCU programs in the NCAA. So those are proverbially what we call independents, such as A&T and Hampton out of the CIAA and Tennessee State out of the Big South OVC in terms of their partnership in football. They're eligible to be in the top 10, but let's see who got votes outside of the top 10 in this preseason rankings going into the media day. We'll see how this corresponds with where teams are ranked. We kind of teased you a little bit with Lindy. We'll get you with that ranking as well. As you see it here, before I break this down, Charles, I did get my Dave Campbell. And if you've been connected with Texas and Texas football, you heard about, you do know about Dave Campbell. And as many people around here call it the Bible of Texas football, you know, they do their own little ranking, if you would. They have a breakdown for Prairie View, Texas Southern. But they do give some love for the entire conference in terms of where they see teams ranked. So it's fascinating when you kind of think about what that looks like. They think Texas Southern, Prairie View is going to be all right in terms of their rankings. I'll go from the bottom to the top. And as I told you, there's some teams that are going to have a spread. Well, you're going to see that here. Not a lot of love for Dave Campbell in terms of Southern coming in at number 12, Charles. At number 11, and they just rank them all. They don't do division. They have Mississippi Valley at 11, Alabama A&M, at 10, Alcorn at 9, Arkansas Pine Bluff at 8, Bethune-Cookman at 7, Grambling at 6, FAMU at 5, Texas Southern at 4. So we saw Lindy's had them low, Texas Southern higher. You have Jackson 3, Alabama State 2, and they have Prairie View number 1 in terms of pick to repeat as SWAC champions. So that means if you had the West, that's Prairie View 1, Texas Southern 2, Grambling 3, Pine Bluff 4, Alcorn State 5, Southern 6. In terms of the East, that would be 1 Alabama State, 2 Jackson State, 3 FAMU, Bethune-Cookman 4, Alabama A&M 5, and Mississippi Valley 6. Now, let's get into the big one. Inaugural Black College Football Poll, just with the HBCUs. We told you what some other folks thought in terms of Lindy's and Dave Campbell. We're going to get a chance to see what Charles thinks, but this is what all the voters and coaches think at the FCS level that voted in this. Again, outside receiving votes is Alcorn State, the Braves, 5-7, 4-4 in 2025. Howard, also 5-7, 2-3 in terms of what they did in the conference race. That's 15 and 13 votes respectively. Also with 13 votes is Alabama A&M, 4-8, 1-7. Thought to be able to get back in the football business, receiving votes, not enough to get in the top 10. At number 10, FAMU, new coach, new chance. See them at 5-7 as they did 4-4 last year, 32 points. Entering the top 10 at number 9, Texas Southern, SWAC 6-5, 5-3, 42 points. At number 8, also out of the SWAC, Bethune-Cookman, 6-6, 5-3, 46 points. And at number 7, Grambling State, the SWAC. Bottom 4, SWAC program, 7-5, 4-4, 6-3. Finish up the bottom 5, Delaware State for the first MEAC entry, 8-4 overall, 4-1 with 98 points, if you would. Looking at the top 5, you have North Carolina Central at 5, 8-4 last season, 3-2, 107 points. We also get these teams in the top 4 that are receiving first place. These are folks that thought some of the teams in their rankings were ranked number 1. Starting at number 4, Alabama State, those Hornets, SK Hornets, out of the SWAC, 10-2 last season, as we said earlier, 7-1, 141 points. You see the top of the heat. They really separated. Everybody's comfortable with these 4. 6 first-place votes. Jackson State at 3, 9-3 overall, 7-1 out of the SWAC, obviously 149 points. Now, while they have more overall points than number 4, they actually have less first-place votes with 4. We see that similar at number 2, Prairie View. 10-4, 71. A lot of folks think they will be back in the mix at the top, but not many of them think they're going to finish first overall. I don't see them as first coming in, but they did get 2 first place votes. So you see right now, 3 SWAC teams, 1 MEAC team in the top 5, but number 1, South Carolina State, the reigning champs. And you see that both from the Division II and the FCS Division I, both of last year's champs, conference-wise, are in the mix, while South Carolina State also won the Cricket Celebration Bowl, now presented by Toyota. They were 10-3, 5-0 out of the conference. Coach over there out of the South Carolina State, he hadn't lost a conference game.
Hadn't lost a conference game yet.
Don't lose a conference game.
Yeah.
With that being said, he has 185 points, 36 points. So the prevailing, overwhelming, everybody's top choice going into this season is South Carolina State. A lot of folks got a lot of love for Chennis Berry. Not just the way he finished last year, but what they think they're going to do for this year. Charles, a lot of the unpack there. Where do you want to start?
Let me go back to something with Dave Campbell. Did you mention was Valley on top of Southern?
Yes.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wasn't ready for that.
I mean, it was a close loss last year in the season, and Valley did win a couple of the last 2, including a win over FAMU.
Okay.
So maybe they think they're building. It also looks like a lot of these folks out here, at least in the national publications, they have, they have mixed relationships of what they think about some of these professional coaches. At least after year 1, they seem to think they're okay. Not a lot of love for Vic, but a lot of love for Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of love, it seems, for over there in Mississippi Valley. Not a lot of love for Falk at Southern. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think you take a look at the poll. The first 4, I think, speak for themselves. You got the Celebration Bowl participants, South Carolina State and Prairie View, and then Jackson State and Alabama State that were just right there toward the end of the season, right there in the mix. North Carolina Central is the one that I'm really curious about in terms of replacing a 2-year starter like Walker Harris. What do you do at quarterback with regards to North Carolina Central? And they still have that hurdle, that South Carolina State hurdle to overcome. Can Delaware State repeat? Marquise Adams does come back for Delaware State, and the physicality that they showed running the ball last year was mind blowing. I know they did have some departures or defections, if you will, through the transfer portal, but can they replenish that talent there at Delaware State? Grambling, it was the 4th quarter collapses last year. I think that was a team that probably could have won a couple more games last season, but they just kind of faltered down the stretch. Bethune-Cookman is kind of an interesting one to kind of sit back and watch. Can they continue their upward momentum? But if there's a team that could supplant any of the bottom 3, Bethune-Cookman, Texas Southern, Florida A&M, I have to agree with Charles Evans. I think Alcorn is kind of a scary team that people need to pay attention to. They went 4-1 down the stretch. The light bulb seemed to come on for Jalen Tolbert midway through the season, and you could start seeing a better Alcorn product probably from October on through November. And they gave Jackson State everything that they could handle in Jackson toward the end. So Alcorn's a team.
It was a rivalry game.
It is a rivalry game, no doubt. But Jalen Tolbert, he really started playing much better football from mid-October through November.
That's true. I'll give you that. Same question I asked you earlier, but now at the FCS level. Which of these top 10 teams at the end of the year is going to be disappointed because they won't even have a top 10 finish? Or a couple of teams, maybe.
Yeah. We build up expectations for Texas Southern. That could be a team that could falter, especially when you kind of take a look at what they're up against this upcoming season in terms of playing home games at multiple venues. So just having that energy week in, week out with regards to Texas Southern. Florida A&M, I think it's going to be, there's always talent, obviously, at Florida A&M, but if there's a year where it could be a step back, this could be the year where they, try to get their ducks in a row this upcoming season. So those are the 2 teams that I kind of would see if they could potentially fall out of the poll.
FAMU, and who else?
Texas Southern. Like my
So you can
ascension
see
into the
Texas Southern
poll.
going either way. Either they really gonna do well.
Yeah, they either go. You just never know with Texas Southern. They could go either way. Cameron McCoy, he transfers over to Texas Southern, but he's going to have to step it up in terms of being a passer. We know Cameron McCoy as being a tremendous athlete, a guy who can really, really great with the RPO, can really run it, but he's going to have to step up. He has targets and Rory and Richardson, has a good running game with Adrian Renfro in the backfield, but we've seen before with Texas Southern, injuries kind of derail them. So do they have the depth that can kind of get them through periods of times where they lose players to injury? And I think that's been kind of the bugaboo for Texas Southern over the past 3 or 4 seasons.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So you have these players with professional backgrounds jumped in the mix. Interesting to see how they continue to do. But you also have these Division II programs that moved up. And we've seen both sides of this. We've seen the success that is out of the world over in South Carolina with Coach Berry. You also seen it last year with Coach Jackson in terms of what he was able to do with the Prairie View team. Not so much for Alabama A&M. We've seen over the years with Morgan State, not so much in terms of getting that same type of trend going Division II. But you spoke about FAMU. Something tells me that Quinn Gray, I don't necessarily see them being able to get it done and surprise everybody enough to run for a championship, particularly with the fact that they were ruled out based on NCAA. But with so many transfers that played on a team that was really well in jail, I think they're going to be a lot better than that, Charles. I see them finishing in the top 10 and maybe even higher. I just think Quinn Gray, in terms of cutting his teeth and what he did with Albany State, literally rebuilding that program. We know that program has had a lot of success, but not of lately. That's going to be interesting.
Here's a question. What I want to ask, Doc, is with the success of first-year coaches, we saw Tremaine Jackson first year at Prairie View get them to the Celebration Bowl. Chinnis Berry, instant success at South Carolina State. Deshaun Jackson, success, at Delaware State. But how much pressure does that put on head coaches as a whole once they start getting into that, second, third, and fourth season, and it hasn't translated yet in terms of the fan base sitting back looking and saying, wait a second, Prime did it year one, Deshaun Jackson, so on and so on and so on. How much pressure does that put on coaches?
I think it's more pressure for Falk over there at Southern. Because it is Southern, they've been down so long. They've tried so many different avenues to get it done. They don't think much about the division they are in just personally, even though we know that it's a solid division. And actually, as of late, closing out things last year's has been really trending in the upward direction, which is not a good thing for them. But you already have folks that don't know what they're going to get from Southern, but you have a lot of Southern folks that are smiling out there. They believe what they've seen in practice, who they brought in, coaches. They think they're going to be fine. So their expectations are pretty high. So I think Falk is the biggest one from the standpoint that he hasn't done it before.
Yeah.
The other Division II programs outside of Jackson, and he had a smaller sample size in terms of conference play. He only played 5 games. To his credit, he did what he needed to do in those 5 games and went 4-1 and got some big non-conference wins. But to me, it's a little different when you're talking about 8 games that you got to play. You have more margin to be great in terms of Jackson. That's a lot. So it's interesting. And we got to look a little deeper in terms of the scheduling, which is some stuff we'll talk about Tuesday, I'm sure, while we're in Birmingham. And then even post to start breaking down schedules, which is something I like to do that we don't think about. And you may not be able to tell the teams, but you certainly know certain teams tend to play better at home, while some teams play really solid on the road. I think that's a question mark that we need to really take a closer look at Southern to see how much charges with them. And I think the other part, when you talk about Quinn Gray over there, the other part of this we don't talk about is like, do you get some key games? I think you can be marginal, be above 500 or playing pretty good. But if you do that, you got to have some big wins. So when you're talking about FAMU, obviously you got to get the Bethune-Cookman game. If you can get a Jackson game or Alabama State, that's going to give you a little room, right? Because folks are going to be excited about those wins. And if you lose to a Prairie View or, you lose to a, I'll take that back. Also, another one that FAMU wants is Southern. So you got to get a mix of those. You got to get maybe 2 of those, right?
Yeah.
And then you can kind of wave if you don't just get off the thing. And you can even take a tough loss to a Alabama A&M. If you're Southern, the same way. That first game, they got to at least look good. Alabama's well. You got to at least look good in there, gives them hope. But you got to find a way to beat Jackson or Grambling State, right?
Yeah.
You can't fall to both Texas Southern and Prairie View. You got to win one of those games. You got to at least look good in those games. Or it's going to be a challenge for folks to get excited about saying, hey, this first year is building. So I don't think that you have to win it all, but you got to find a way to get some key wins in there.
Win the right games.
The right games, right, is what I've always said about new coaches. It's not so much doing the Richardson, if you would, based in terms of Coach Richardson, what he was able to do his first year, or even what we've seen the trend for those teams, like you said, Jackson, both at Prairie View and Delaware State, and obviously the phenom, which is something that you shouldn't be looking at, but a lot of folks are going to think twice, is Coach Berry. And what's fascinating, Texas Southern had those opening searches, and they did interview them to their credit, but Ooh. South Carolina State, one thing they did, remember, they started their coaching search early. Yeah. You know the thing, one hand in the bush is better than nothing. So once he got the offer at South Carolina State, you don't have to move. Yeah, you look at everybody else, but as they start saying, hey, we want to take to this board, you ain't going to be like, well, let me wait and see what these programs, you're going to take it. So that's also part of the game. How good is your program from a board level all the way down to the president AD about being aggressive when you're going to make the move? They didn't do it with Coach Berry. Be interesting to see over the next couple of years how people feel about that in terms of those decisions at those two programs. Even though if you're Texas Southern, you're in a pretty good position. You got your first winning season in 10 years since 2010, 16 years, 20 years overall since 2010. Obviously, that championship was taken back in that season, obviously. But you got that in the mix. So you got some excitement over there. We said this last year. That game against Prairie View went down to the last play. They win that game. Technically, everything else stays the same.
Yeah.
They actually go and play Jackson State for the championship in that Jackson, right? One loss, one win is the difference, because they would have a tie record, but they would have the head-to-head tiebreak over Prairie View because they would have won that game. If, ands, and buts, and nuts, we know what they say, but I do want to give some people perspective in Texas Southern in terms, as you said, a team to watch. Can they replace KJ? That's going to be interesting in terms of what that looks like. But, yeah, a lot of questions on the table, so many new variables in this new football market. So I'm fascinated to see what that looks like. I can't wait till Tuesday, Charles, to take a deeper dive. We get a chance to talk to some coaches, really to get some feel, talk to some players. Everybody's going to be excited. But if you've been in this in a while, you have a different way to kind of feel some quiet excitement, and you get some tidbits of why some coaches, some players feel that way, and you can kind of see maybe a team will be a little more different than what we think coming into it. So I can't wait to revisit this on Thursday in terms of what that looks like. Again, we do plan to do a live show in Birmingham, so keep an eye on that on Tuesday. Roy is looking to set up everything and have us ready to go. If not, we'll be live Wednesday to give you the SWAC football media day for 2026.